The pregnancy test sat on the edge of the bathroom sink, still in its wrapper. I'd bought it 3 weeks ago, carrying it in my purse every single day, unable to find the courage to open it. Not because I was afraid of being pregnant, because I already knew I wasn't. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The endometriosis diagnosis had come back in May. The doctor's words still echoed in my sterile memory. Your chances of conceiving naturally are less than 5%. I'd driven home that day in silence, rehearsing how I'd tell Marcus, how I'd watch his face crumble, how we'd hold each other and cry and figure out our next steps together. That was 4 months ago. I still hadn't told him, not because I was afraid of his reaction, because 3 days after my diagnosis, I'd found the receipt, Tiffany & Co. $3,200, a purchase I hadn't received. I stood now in our suburban bathroom, the September morning light cutting through the frosted window, illuminating dust particles that danced like tiny, uncaring witnesses. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn. Normal sounds. Sounds that belonged to a normal Tuesday morning in a normal marriage. I picked up the unused pregnancy test and dropped it in the trash can, listening to it hit the bottom with a hollow thunk. The truth was, I'd stopped being surprised by Marcus's lies somewhere around lie number 47. I'd started counting them in a small notebook I kept in my car. Blue ink. Neat columns. Date. Lie. Evidence. It was organized, methodical, the same way I approached everything in my life. The same way I'd been approaching the Westbridge Academy inspection for the past 6 months. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Priya, my colleague at the State Accreditation Board. Interview with Harmon scheduled for 2 p.m. She's pushing back hard. Lawyer will be present. I smiled, typing back a quick response. Perfect. See you there, Vanessa Harmon, founder and head mistress of Westbridge Academy, the elite private school that catered to the children of tech executives and venture capitalists. The school with the pristine reputation, the waiting list that stretched for years, the glossy brochures promising excellence in education and nurturing the whole child. The school that was about to lose its accreditation in approximately 43 days. Vanessa didn't know that yet, of course. She thought this was just another routine inspection, another hoop to jump through, another bureaucrat to charm with her practiced smile and carefully curated tour of her facilities. She'd already tried that during our first meeting in March, walking me through hallways decorated with student artwork, introducing me to teachers who recited scripted talking points about innovative pedagogy and student-centered learning. I'd smiled and nodded and taken extensive notes. What Vanessa didn't know was that I'd been a teacher for 11 years before joining the accreditation board. I knew what real student artwork looked like versus what got produced when teachers did most of the work. I knew the difference between genuine teacher enthusiasm and rehearsed performance. I knew how to read between the lines of curriculum documents and spot the gaps between stated policy and actual practice. I also knew what it looked like when a school was systematically lying about everything from teacher qualifications to student-teacher ratios to safety protocols. Westbridge Academy was a beautiful lie, wrapped in expensive architecture and tied with a bow made of parent donations, and Vanessa Harmon was sleeping with my husband. I hadn't known that part in March. That revelation had come later, in the most mundane way possible. A forgotten phone. A text notification lighting up the screen while Marcus showered. A name I'd heard before. V. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the red dress I bought you. The red dress. I'd Googled Tiffany receipts that same evening, cross-referencing the date with Marcus's calendar. Dinner meeting with potential investor for his startup. The startup that had been almost ready to launch for 3 years now. The startup that justified his flexible schedule, his evening meetings, his weekend networking events. The startup that, as far as I could tell from accessing our joint bank accounts, didn't actually exist. I'd sat on our bed that night, phone in hand, and made a decision. Not the decision you might think. Not confrontation, not tears, not packing bags or calling lawyers. I decided to do what I did best: investigate, document, and build an airtight case. Marcus thought I was a high school English teacher. That wasn't entirely a lie. I had been until 2 years ago, when I'd been recruited by the state accreditation board. The job came with a significant pay raise, comprehensive benefits, and a level of authority that most people didn't associate with education bureaucracy. It also came with a requirement that had suited me perfectly: absolute discretion. We didn't advertise our investigations. We didn't warn schools when we were building a case for revocation. We gathered evidence quietly, systematically, and by the time schools realized they were in trouble, it was far too late to fix the problems. Marcus knew I still went to school every day. He knew I came home with papers to grade and complained about faculty meetings. He didn't know those papers were compliance reports, or that those faculty meetings were actually case review sessions where we decided which schools would survive and which would be shut down. He'd never asked for details. In the beginning, I'd thought it was because he respected my need to decompress after work. Now I understood it was because he simply didn't care. The realization hadn't hurt as much as I'd expected. Maybe because by the time I'd fully understood the scope of his betrayal, I was already too deep into my own investigation. Too focused on the bigger picture. I brushed my teeth, examining my reflection in the mirror. 34 years old. Dark circles under my eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide anymore. Hair pulled back in the same practical ponytail I'd worn since graduate school. I looked exactly like what Marcus thought I was: a tired teacher in a dead-end job, going through the motions, contributing just enough to the household finances to justify her existence. The irony was almost beautiful. My salary was nearly double his freelance income. I'd been paying most of our mortgage for 2 years. The car he drove, the watch he wore, the laptop he used to message his mistress, all purchased with my money. Money from the job he and Vanessa had laughed about over wine 3 weeks ago, when I'd followed them to that bistro downtown. I hadn't planned to follow them. I'd been driving home from a site visit to a charter school in the suburbs when I'd spotted Marcus's car, my car, technically, parked outside Marcello's. Something made me pull over. Curiosity, maybe? Or the part of me that needed to see it with my own eyes. I'd sat in a coffee shop across the street, laptop open, pretending to work while I watched them through the window. Vanessa had worn a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her blonde hair was styled in effortless waves that took at least an hour to achieve. She'd laughed at something Marcus said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. They looked like a couple from a lifestyle magazine. Attractive, successful, perfectly matched. I'd ordered a second coffee and opened the preliminary Westbridge Academy report on my laptop, reviewing the discrepancies we'd already documented. Unqualified teachers listed with fake credentials. Fire safety violations covered up with temporary fixes during inspection dates. Financial irregularities suggesting tuition money was being diverted into personal accounts. By the time they'd finished their wine and left the restaurant, Marcus's hand on the small of her back, proprietary and intimate, I'd drafted the framework for the final compliance violation that would end Westbridge Academy's accreditation. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I'd been methodically tightening the noose. I walked downstairs, my footsteps silent on the carpeted stairs. Marcus was already gone. Early morning networking breakfast, according to the note he'd left on the kitchen counter. The note was propped against the coffee maker, written in his careful handwriting. Meeting with investor group. Home by 6. Love you, love you. 2 words that had become completely meaningless, repeated by rote, a habit neither of us had bothered to break. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the recycling bin. Then I poured myself coffee, opened my laptop at the kitchen table, and reviewed my schedule for the day. Final site visit to Westbridge Academy. Unannounced, as per protocol when serious violations had been documented. PM. Formal interview with Vanessa Harmon regarding discrepancies in accreditation documentation. 30 p.m. Meeting with state superintendent to present final recommendations. Tomorrow. Board vote on accreditation status. Everything was in place. 6 months of investigation, hundreds of hours of documentation review, interviews with current and former teachers, analysis of financial records, surprise classroom observations, reviews of student files. We'd built a case so comprehensive that Westbridge's lawyers would have nothing to work with. Every violation was documented with photographic evidence, witness testimony, and paper trails. Vanessa Harmon had built her school on lies, and I was about to burn it to the ground using nothing but the truth. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Priya. Heads up, Harmon's already called the superintendent's office twice this morning. She's scared. Good. She should be. I closed my laptop and carried my coffee to the sliding glass door that led to our backyard. The lawn needed mowing. The garden I'd planted in the spring was overgrown with weeds. The patio furniture we'd bought on sale last summer sat unused, gathering pollen and bird droppings. This house had been my dream once. Our dream, I'd thought. A fixer-upper in a good school district, close to both our jobs. We'd spend weekends painting walls and picking out light fixtures. We talked about which room would be the nursery, how we'd build a playset in the backyard, family barbecues and birthday parties, and all the Norman Rockwell fantasies that people wrapped around the idea of home ownership. I took another sip of coffee, feeling nothing. The house was just a house. The marriage was just a legal document. The dream had been just that, a dream, built on the same kind of beautiful lies that Vanessa used to sell parents on Westbridge Academy. Sell them the fantasy. Hide the rot underneath. Keep up appearances until the whole structure collapsed. The difference was, I was about to expose the rot. And I was going to do it with a smile. The Westbridge Academy campus sprawled across 12 acres of prime real estate in the city's most expensive suburb. The main building was a converted mansion, all red brick and white columns, the kind of architecture that screamed old money and traditional values. Additional buildings had been added over the years, a STEM center with floor-to-ceiling windows, an arts pavilion with a proper theater, athletic fields that would make most colleges jealous. Driving through the gates at 8:47 a.m., I understood why parents paid $40,000 a year to send their children here. The place looked like every promise of success wrapped into a single campus. This was where future CEOs and senators would get their start. This was excellence, achievement, the American dream in educational form. This was also where fire extinguishers were 3 years past inspection, where certified teachers had fake degrees from diploma mills, and where the special education program that justified additional state funding existed only on paper. I parked in the visitor lot, gathering my tablet and the official clipboard that marked me as someone who mattered. The morning was crisp, that perfect early fall weather that made everything seem more vivid. Students were arriving, dropped off by parents in Tesla SUVs and BMW sedans. They wore uniforms, navy blazers, khaki pants, plaid skirts, and carried expensive backpacks. They looked like miniature investment bankers, Ms. Chen. The voice came from behind me. I turned to find Vanessa Harmon herself striding across the parking lot, her heels clicking against the pavement. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Her smile was bright and professional, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I wasn't expecting you this morning. Your assistant said our meeting was at 2. The interview is at 2, I said, keeping my voice neutral and professional. This is a routine site visit. Unannounced, as specified in Section 4.3 of the Accreditation Guidelines. Her smile tightened. Of course, though it would have been courteous to provide notice. Courtesy isn't required by state regulation. I adjusted my grip on the clipboard. Shall we begin? For just a moment I saw something flash across her face. Anger, maybe, or fear. Then the professional mask slammed back into place. Absolutely. Would you like to start with the main building? I'll start with the special education wing. 3rd time this year, so I'm familiar with the layout. The special education wing? She fell into step beside me, her heels clicking against the sidewalk. May I ask why that's the focus? You may not. I kept walking, not looking at her. Please direct me to the entrance. She led me around the main building to a smaller structure in the back, connected to the main campus by a covered walkway. This was the part most parents never saw during tours. The building was older, not yet renovated, without the architectural charm of the main campus. Paint peeling slightly on the window frames, a crack in the foundation that had been inexpertly patched. Inside, the hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and something else. Mildew, maybe, or old carpet that needed replacing. Vanessa walked ahead of me, her posture rigid, her professional smile still fixed in place. As you know, we're very proud of our special education program, she began, launching into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. We serve 15 students with identified learning disabilities, providing individualized support, and how many certified special education teachers do you employ? I interrupted, making a note on my tablet. 3 full-time and 2 part-time. Their names, please. She hesitated. I'd need to check with HR for the complete roster. You don't know the names of your special education staff? Of course I do. I just want to ensure I give you accurate information. I looked up from my tablet, meeting her eyes directly. Ms. Harmon, I've reviewed your staff directory. You list 3 full-time special education teachers, Jennifer Walsh, David Chen, and Maria Rodriguez. Jennifer Walsh's teaching license expired in 2019 and was never renewed. David Chen has a bachelor's degree in business administration and no teaching certification of any kind. Maria Rodriguez is a real person with real credentials, but she left your employment 16 months ago. Would you like to revise your statement about staff qualifications? The color drained from Vanessa's face. There must be some mistake in our paperwork. I'm sure if you look at our updated records, I'm looking at the records you submitted to the state board last month. The records you signed and certified is accurate. Falsifying accreditation documents is a serious violation, Ms. Harmon. It's also a crime. I don't appreciate your accusatory tone. Her voice had gone cold. We've made some administrative errors, perhaps, but to suggest criminal activity, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. I turned away from her, walking down the hallway and opening the first classroom door without knocking. Inside, I found 8 students sitting at desks, working on what appeared to be elementary-level math worksheets. They ranged in age from about 10 to 14. A young woman who couldn't have been older than 22 sat at the teacher's desk, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, startled as I entered. Sorry, she began. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Are you a certified teacher? I asked. I'm a classroom aide. Mrs. Rodriguez no longer works here. I looked at the students who had stopped working to stare at us. Several of them had expensive noise-canceling headphones around their necks. One had a tablet displaying a math game. How long have you been alone with these students? Just this morning, Mrs. Harmon said the regular teacher was out sick. I turned back to Vanessa, who had followed me into the room. Where is the certified special education teacher who's supposed to be supervising this classroom? We have a substitute. Is the substitute certified to teach special education in this state? Silence. I'm going to need copies of all substitute teacher credentials, current fire safety inspection certificates, staff background checks, financial disbursement records for the special education program, and the qualifications of every person currently employed in an instructional capacity. I spoke clearly, making sure the young aide could hear every word. You have until our 2 o'clock meeting to produce these documents. Failure to provide complete and accurate records will result in immediate suspension of accreditation status pending full investigation. You can't just... Vanessa started. I can. I am. 2 o'clock, Ms. Harmon. Bring your lawyer. I walked past her, back into the hallway. She followed, her heels clicking rapidly against the linoleum. Miss Chen, please. I understand there have been some administrative oversights, but Westbridge has been serving this community for 15 years. We have 300 students who depend on what? Unqualified teachers? Fake programs? Safety violations? I stopped walking and turned to face her. Those students deserve better than what you're selling their parents. They deserve actual education, not expensive daycare with a prestigious name. How dare you? Her voice shook with rage now, the professional mask finally cracking. Do you have any idea who I am? The connections I have? One phone call and I can have your job. Make the call. I kept my voice level. While you're at it, call your lawyer. You're going to need one. I walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway. My hands were steady as I pushed open the door to exit the building, but my heart was racing. Not from fear, from satisfaction. This was what justice felt like. Cold, systematic, inevitable. I spent the next 2 hours conducting a thorough inspection of every building on campus. Fire extinguisher violations in 3 buildings. Mold in the 4th grade bathroom. A science lab with expired chemicals stored improperly. A playground with equipment that didn't meet current safety standards. Each violation was photographed, documented, cross-referenced with previous inspection reports. Priya met me in the parking lot at noon, carrying her own tablet and case files. She was in her late 40s, a former principal who'd joined the accreditation board after watching too many schools cut corners to save money. She had 3 kids of her own and took education violations personally. How bad? She asked. Worse than we thought. The special education program is completely fraudulent. She's got one 22-year-old aide supervising 8 students with no certified teacher in sight. Priya's jaw tightened. Those poor kids. It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. I pulled up my photo documentation. Half the teachers she claims on staff don't actually work here. The ones who do work here are barely qualified to substitute, let alone teach full-time. Her financial records show tuition payments going into the special education line item, but there's no corresponding disbursement for qualified staff or proper resources. She's pocketing it, or using it to fund something else. Either way, it's fraud. I closed my tablet. The board vote tomorrow is going to be unanimous. Have you told the superintendent yet? Meeting at 4:30. But Harmon doesn't know that. I checked my watch. Interview starts in 2 hours. Want to grab lunch first? We ate at a small Vietnamese restaurant 3 blocks from the district office, reviewing our documentation over banh mi and iced coffee. Priya had been conducting her own parallel investigation into Westbridge's financial practices, following the money trail through parent donations, state funding, and mysterious educational foundation grants. Here's what I don't understand, Priya said, scrolling through her spreadsheet. Westbridge pulls in roughly $12 million a year in tuition alone. Add in the state funding for special education, the grant money, the parent donations. We're looking at close to $15 million annually. The operational costs for a school this size, even with the fancy facilities, shouldn't exceed $8 million. So where's the other $7 million going? Personal accounts? I suggested. Some of it, definitely. But not $7 million. That would be too obvious. Too easy to trace. She tapped her tablet screen. I think there's another entity involved. A management company or consulting firm that's billing Westbridge for services and kicking money back to Harmon under the table. That's sophisticated fraud. Which means Harmon isn't working. Alone. Priya met my eyes across the table. This goes deeper than one corrupt administrator. Someone with financial expertise is helping her move this money around. I thought about Marcus. His failed startup, his expensive lifestyle, his sudden investor meetings that never seemed to produce actual investment. I might know someone who fits that profile, I said carefully. Priya raised an eyebrow. Someone we should be investigating? Maybe. Let me look into it first. We finished lunch and headed to the district office, a modern building downtown that housed the state accreditation board along with various other education agencies. Our offices were on the 3rd floor, a maze of cubicles and conference rooms that smelled like old coffee and copy paper. The conference room for Vanessa's interview was ready when we arrived. Recording equipment set up, fresh legal pads and pens arranged around the table, a carafe of water with glasses. Everything official, everything documented. This wasn't a casual conversation. It was an interrogation. And we wanted Vanessa to know it. She arrived at exactly 2:00, flanked by a lawyer in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Robert Kellerman. Vanessa had changed clothes since this morning, now wearing a different designer suit, this one in charcoal gray. Professional armor. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfect, but I could see the exhaustion around her eyes. Good. Let her be scared. Ms. Harmon, Mr. Kellerman, please have a seat. I gestured to the chairs across from us. This interview is being recorded, as per state regulations. You've been provided with documentation of violations found during today's inspection, as well as discrepancies in your accreditation filings over the past 3 years. Do you understand why you're here? My client understands, Kellerman said smoothly. However, we'd like to state for the record that Westbridge Academy has been fully cooperative with all accreditation processes, and any alleged violations are the result of administrative errors that can be readily corrected. Administrative errors. I opened my tablet, pulling up the first document. Is it an administrative error to claim state funding for 15 special education students when you employ 0 qualified special education teachers? The teacher was out sick today, as I explained, Vanessa started. Ms. Rodriguez hasn't worked for you in 16 months. Jennifer Walsh's license expired years ago. David Chen was never qualified to teach in the first place. I looked at Kellerman. These aren't administrative errors. This is systematic fraud. That's a serious accusation, Kellerman said. Do you have evidence? Extensive evidence. Priya slid a thick folder across the table. Staff records, payroll documentation, state funding applications, financial statements, all showing a pattern of falsified credentials and misappropriated funds. I watched Vanessa's face as she flipped through the folder, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her hands start to tremble slightly before she gripped the folder tighter to hide it. Where did you get these documents? Kellerman demanded. Public records requests, staff interviews, inspection reports, and financial audits. I kept my voice calm, all obtained legally through proper channels. Some of these documents are clearly confidential personnel files, which your client submitted to the state board as part of her accreditation application. She doesn't get to claim privacy violations for documents she provided to us voluntarily. I turned my attention back to Vanessa. Ms. Harmon, I need you to explain the discrepancy between the special education funding you've received and the actual services you've provided. She looked at her lawyer, who nodded slightly. I'd like to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. This isn't a criminal proceeding, I interrupted. Though it may become one, depending on what the state attorney general decides to do with our findings. Right now, this is an administrative hearing regarding your school's accreditation status. You can refuse to answer, but that refusal will be noted in our official report and will factor into the board's decision tomorrow. Tomorrow? Vanessa's voice cracked slightly. The vote is tomorrow? Emergency board session given the severity of the violations. I consulted my notes. Falsified staff credentials, financial fraud, safety violations, failure to provide required special education services, and, this is a new one, threatening a state official during an inspection. That last one is also a crime, by the way. I didn't threaten. You told me you'd have my job. You claimed to have connections powerful enough to affect my employment. That's intimidation of a state official in the performance of their duties. I made a note on my tablet. It's all in my report, along with the exact wording of your threat. Kellerman put a hand on Vanessa's arm, stopping her from speaking. Ms. Chen, let's be reasonable here. Westbridge Academy serves 300 students from respected families. Closing the school would create significant disruption. Mr. Kellerman, those 300 students are currently being defrauded. Their parents are paying for qualified teachers and comprehensive programs that don't exist. Some of those students have special needs that aren't being met because your client is pocketing the money meant for their education. I closed my tablet. The disruption of finding them new schools is unfortunate. The disruption of continuing to lie to them is criminal. Perhaps we could negotiate a remediation plan, Kellerman tried. Give Westbridge time to correct the deficiencies. The deficiencies are too extensive and too fundamental. This isn't a matter of needing better professional development or updated curriculum. Your client has been running a systematic fraud for years. I stood up. The board vote is tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're welcome to attend and present any mitigating evidence you might have. But I should tell you that I'm recommending immediate revocation of accreditation, notification of the State Attorney General's Office for criminal investigation, and referral to the IRS for tax fraud examination. Vanessa stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. You can't do this. Do you know who sends their children to my school? State senators, tech CEOs, federal judges. People who will be very interested to learn what you've been doing with their tuition money, I finished. Make sure you bring good lawyers to tomorrow's meeting, Ms. Harmon. You're going to need them. I walked out of the conference room, Priya following close behind. We didn't speak until we were back in my office with the door closed. That went well, Priya said dryly. She's panicking. That's good. I sat down at my desk, pulling up my meeting notes to draft the official report. Panicked people make mistakes. She's also going to call in every favor she has. You realize that, right? She wasn't exaggerating about her connections. Let her call them. We have documentation that would stand up in federal court. The board isn't going to ignore evidence this comprehensive no matter who calls them. Priya leaned against my desk. You're enjoying this. I am. I looked up at her. Is that wrong? Normally? Maybe. But watching you take down someone who's been stealing from special needs kids? She smiled. Enjoy away. She left to finalize her own portion of the report, and I spent the next hour documenting everything from this morning's inspection and afternoon's interview. Every word Vanessa had said, every violation we'd found, every piece of evidence that proved Westbridge Academy was a beautiful scam. My phone buzzed halfway through drafting the executive summary. A text from Marcus. Running late. Don't wait dinner. I stared at the message for a long moment, then opened my phone's location tracking app. The app I'd secretly installed 3 months ago, hidden in a folder of unused utilities. The app that showed me exactly where Marcus went and when. Currently, he was at an address I recognized. Vanessa Harmon's house. Of course he was. I took a screenshot of his location, saved it to my encrypted folder along with the dozens of others I'd collected, and went back to writing my report. Tomorrow, Vanessa's professional life would implode. And very soon after that, I'd detonate the bomb waiting underneath my marriage. But tonight, I'd go home to our quiet house and heat up leftovers and pretend everything was normal. Because the thing about taking someone down completely is that you don't do it in pieces. You don't give them warning. You don't let them prepare. You wait until every piece is in position. And then you strike all at once, leaving nothing but ruins behind. I typed the final paragraph of my report, recommending immediate and permanent revocation of Westbridge Academy's accreditation, and hit send. The document would go to every board member tonight, giving them time to review before tomorrow's vote. By this time tomorrow, Vanessa Harmon would understand what it felt like to watch your carefully constructed world collapse around you, and she'd have no idea that the woman who destroyed her was married to her boyfriend. The irony was delicious. I packed up my laptop, turned off my office lights, and drove home through rush hour traffic, thinking about justice and revenge and the thin line between them, thinking about Marcus and Vanessa, probably tangled together in her expensive sheets right now, probably laughing about my dead-end teaching job and my boring, predictable life. Let them laugh. Let them think they were smart, that they'd gotten away with something. The truth was coming for both of them. And the truth, properly documented and systematically presented, was unstoppable. I pulled into my driveway at 6:47 p.m. The house was dark, empty, waiting. I unlocked the door, dropped my bags in the entryway, and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow would be a good day. Tomorrow, the first domino would fall, and I would stand there and watch it happen with a smile on my face. The board meeting room was already packed when I arrived at 9:30 a.m. Parents filled the gallery seats, their faces ranging from confused to angry to terrified. Someone had leaked news of the emergency session, and the Westbridge Academy Parent Association had mobilized overnight. I recognized several faces from local news: a state senator, a tech company founder, a prominent surgeon. The kind of people who were used to getting their way. Vanessa sat in the front row with 3 lawyers now instead of just Kellerman. She'd dressed for battle in a black suit that screamed power and control, her hair slicked back, her expression coldly professional. She didn't look at me as I took my seat at the board table. Marcus had still been asleep when I'd left the house at 7. He'd come home after midnight, reeking of expensive perfume and wine, and collapsed into bed without a word. I'd lain awake beside him, listening to him snore, thinking about how today would unfold. The board members filed in at 9:55. 7 people who held the power to make or break educational institutions across the state. I'd worked with each of them for 2 years, had built relationships based on thorough research and unassailable evidence. They trusted me because I'd never brought them a case that wasn't bulletproof. Today would be no different. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the board chair, called the meeting to order at exactly 10 a.m. We're convened for an emergency review of Westbridge Academy's accreditation status. Ms. Chen, you've provided the board with your preliminary findings. Please present your full report. I stood, connecting my laptop to the projection system. The first slide appeared on the screen behind me, a photo of the special education classroom I'd visited yesterday, with 8 students and 1 unqualified aide. Westbridge Academy has systematically defrauded the state of California, its students and their families for a minimum of 3 years, I began. No preamble, no softening, just the facts. The evidence breaks down into 4 categories: falsified staff credentials, financial fraud, safety violations, and failure to provide required special education services. I walked through each category methodically. Photos of expired fire extinguishers, copies of fake teaching certificates, financial records showing money flowing into special education accounts and never coming out, testimony from former teachers who'd been pressured to hide violations during previous inspections. The parents in the gallery grew quieter as I presented. I could see the realization dawning on their faces. They'd been lied to. Their $40,000 per year had bought them nothing but an expensive fraud. In total, we've documented 73 separate violations of state accreditation standards, I concluded. Each violation alone would warrant serious review. Together, they paint a picture of an institution that has never been in compliance with basic educational standards. These are outrageous allegations. One of Vanessa's lawyers stood up. Your client will have an opportunity to respond. Dr. Morrison cut him off. Sit down, Vanessa stood, her hands gripping the podium. Distinguished board members, I want to acknowledge that Westbridge has experienced some administrative challenges. But to characterize these as systematic fraud is a gross misrepresentation. Is Maria Rodriguez still employed by your school? I asked. That's not a simple question. Yes or no? She resigned, but we've been in the process of replacing for 16 months, while continuing to claim state funding for services she was supposedly providing? I pulled up another document. You submitted paperwork last month certifying that Mrs. Rodriguez was on staff and providing direct services to special needs students. That's perjury, Ms. Harmon. My client misspoke, Kellerman interjected. The paperwork was prepared by administrative staff. Paperwork that she signed. Paperwork that she certified as accurate under penalty of perjury. I looked at the board members. We've provided copies of every fraudulent document, along with proof that Ms. Harmon personally reviewed and approved each one. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Harmon, do you have any evidence that contradicts Ms. Chen's findings? Vanessa's face had gone pale. I have testimonials from parents, from teachers. Testimonials don't override documentary evidence, another board member said. Do you have proof that the teachers listed on your staff actually hold valid credentials? Silence. Do you have financial records showing that special education funds were used appropriately? More silence. Then I don't see what there is to discuss. Dr. Morrison looked at her fellow board members. Given the severity and scope of these violations, I move for immediate revocation of accreditation, pending criminal investigation. Second, came from my left. All in favor? 7 hands went up. Unanimous. The gallery erupted. Parents shouting questions, lawyers demanding stays of execution, reporters, somehow reporters had gotten in, shouting for comments. Dr. Morrison banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Order. She waited for the noise to die down. Westbridge Academy's accreditation is hereby revoked, effective immediately. The school must cease operations by the end of this week. Student records will be transferred to receiving schools through the district office. This decision is final and not subject to appeal. I watched Vanessa's face as the words landed, watched her perfect composure finally shatter. She turned, looking for support from her lawyers, from the parents, from anyone. But the parents were already leaving, phones out, frantically calling other private schools to secure spots for their children. Her empire had collapsed in less than 15 minutes. She caught my eye across the room. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then understanding flickered across her face, some instinct telling her that this wasn't random, that somehow this was personal. I smiled at her. A small, cold smile that said, I know exactly who you are. Then I gathered my materials and left the room. Priya found me in my office an hour later, where I was beginning the paperwork to refer Vanessa's case to the state attorney general. That was brutal, she said, sitting down across from my desk. Effective but brutal. She deserved brutal. I didn't look up from my typing. She stole from special needs kids, Priya. She falsified documents and endangered students and lined her pockets with money that was supposed to fund education. I'm not criticizing. I'm in awe. Priya tilted her head. I've worked with you for 2 years, and I've never seen you this focused on a case. What's really going on? I stopped typing, looked at her, debated how much to say. She's sleeping with my husband, I said finally. Priya's eyes widened. Jesus. Has been for at least 6 months, probably longer. They met through some networking event. She needed financial consulting for the school. He needed clients for his fake startup. I'm guessing he's been helping her hide money, which means he's complicit in the fraud. Does he know what you do? Your real job? No, he thinks I'm a high school English teacher. Works late, grades papers, attends boring faculty meetings. I turned back to my computer. He has no idea that I've been investigating his girlfriend for half a year. And now? Now I finish destroying her professionally. Then I move on to destroying my marriage. I pulled up another folder on my computer. I've documented everything, Priya. Every lie Marcus has told. Every fake meeting. Every dollar he's spent on her using our joint account. I've tracked his location, saved his text messages, compiled a record that would impress a forensic accountant. You've been planning this for a while. 6 months. The same 6 months I've been building the case against Westbridge. I looked at her. People think revenge is hot and emotional. It's not. Real revenge is cold. It's patient. It's methodical. You don't destroy someone in a moment of anger. You destroy them so completely that they never see it coming until it's too late to stop it. Priya was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? I'm going to send this referral to the Attorney General, recommending they investigate both Vanessa Harmon and her financial consultant, whose name happens to be Marcus Chen. Then I'm going to go home, pack Marcus's belongings and file for divorce. By the time he figures out what's happening, both he and his girlfriend will be facing criminal charges. Priya shook her head. That's incredibly efficient. I learned from the best. I hit send on the referral email, watching it disappear into the state's legal system. You taught me that thorough documentation beats emotion every time. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Can we talk tonight? Important. I stared at the message, wondering what he wanted to discuss. Maybe he'd heard about Westbridge and was panicking about his connection to the fraud. Maybe Vanessa had told him about the investigation and he was trying to figure out how to distance himself. Or maybe, and this would be rich, he was finally ready to confess about the affair. I texted back, I'll be home by 6. Then I called my lawyer. Jennifer Park had handled my mother's estate after she died, and I'd been impressed by her efficiency and discretion. When I'd started documenting Marcus's affair, I'd quietly retained her for divorce preparation. Over the past 3 months, we'd assembled everything I needed: financial records proving my income had supported our household, documentation of his infidelity, proof that he'd used marital funds for personal expenses related to his affair. "I saw the news about Westbridge Academy," Jennifer said when she answered. "That was your case?" It was. "And it connects to my divorce? How?" "My husband has been providing financial consulting to Vanessa Harmon, the woman he's also sleeping with. I have reason to believe he's helped her hide money and falsify financial records. The Attorney General is going to start investigating her, and when they do, they'll find his fingerprints all over the fraud." "Jesus, Sarah, you buried both of them." "I documented their crimes." "They buried themselves." I pulled up the divorce paperwork we'd been drafting. "I want to file today. Can you have the papers ready by 5? "Today? Are you sure?" "We could wait until—" "I'm sure. He's meeting with me tonight to talk about something important. I want him served before he has a chance to spin whatever story he's planning." "Okay, give me 2 hours." Jennifer paused. "You know this is going to get ugly, right? If he's facing criminal charges related to Westbridge, his lawyers are going to try to drag you into it. They'll claim you had a conflict of interest, that your investigation was personally motivated. Let them try. Every step of my investigation was by the book. Every violation I documented was real. The fact that Vanessa was sleeping with my husband doesn't change the evidence. If anything, it proves I was more thorough because I knew the scrutiny would be intense." "You've really thought this through. For 6 months. File the papers, Jennifer. It's time." I spent the afternoon closing out the Westbridge case file, documenting every meeting, every violation, every piece of evidence in the official record. By 4 p.m., the case was ready for the Attorney General's office. Vanessa Harmon would be facing criminal charges within the month. Her school was finished. Her reputation was destroyed. Phase 1. Complete. I left the office at 5:30, stopping by Jennifer's law office to pick up the divorce papers. They were thick, 57 pages of documented lies, financial malfeasance, and proof of infidelity. Everything I needed to ensure a clean break and protect my assets. Marcus's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. He was sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop open, his face buried in his hands. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Sarah, we need to talk." "I know. That's why I'm here." I set my bag down on the counter, keeping the divorce papers hidden inside. "What did you want to discuss?" "It's about— There's been a situation with a client. Westbridge Academy. You might have seen on the news. I saw. Their accreditation was revoked. Something about fraud." "Yeah?" He ran his hands through his hair. "The thing is, I did some consulting work for them. Financial planning, budget analysis. And now there's going to be an investigation, and I'm worried that you'll be implicated in the fraud." I kept my voice neutral, curious. "I didn't know about any fraud. I just helped them organize their accounts, move some money around for tax efficiency." "That's completely legal, is it? Moving money around to hide it from auditors?" "That's not what I did. I provided legitimate financial consulting services, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I'm just worried about how it might look." "Probably looks like you were helping Vanessa Harmon commit fraud." I pulled the divorce papers from my bag, setting them on the table between us. "But that's the least of your problems." He stared at the papers. "What is this?" "Divorce filing. 57 pages documenting your affair with Vanessa Harmon, your misuse of marital funds, and your general failure to be honest about anything in the past 2 years. The color drained from his face. "Sarah, I can explain." "Don't. I don't want your explanations." I sat down across from him, calm and controlled. "I know everything, Marcus. I've known for months. Every lie you told, every fake meeting, every dollar you spent on her, it's all documented in those papers. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." I pointed at the papers. "You're being served officially tomorrow, but I wanted you to see them first." Professional courtesy. Professional courtesy? He laughed, a bitter sound. You're ending our marriage with professional courtesy? How else should I do it? With tears and drama? You don't deserve my emotion, Marcus. You haven't earned it. I stood up. I want you out of the house by tomorrow evening. Take whatever you can fit in your car. Everything else we'll divide through lawyers. You can't just kick me out. This is my home too. Actually, you'll find in the papers that the house is solely in my name. My income paid for it. You've contributed essentially nothing to our finances for 2 years. I walked to the cabinet, pulling out a glass and pouring myself water. You'll also find documentation showing that you used our joint account to pay for your girlfriend's jewelry, dinners, hotel rooms. That's theft, by the way. Misappropriation of marital funds. He was looking through the papers now, his hands shaking. This is insane. You've been planning this for 6 months. Yes. I took a sip of water. You know what the funny thing is? I never would have caught you if you hadn't been so sloppy. The Tiffany receipt left on the counter. The text messages on your unlocked phone. The location tracking you forgot was enabled on your phone plan. You tracked my location? Our family plan. You gave me access when we got married. You just forgot about it. I set down my glass. You forgot about a lot of things, actually. Like the fact that I'm not stupid. Like the fact that I pay attention. Like the fact that underestimating people is the fastest way to get destroyed by them. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You're proud of this? You're actually proud of sneaking around and spying, and I'm proud of protecting myself from a liar and a thief. Yes. I met his eyes. Did you really think you'd get away with it? Did you think I'd just never noticed that you were living off my income while sleeping with someone else? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You met Vanessa at some networking event. You saw an opportunity, a wealthy woman running a successful school who needed financial consulting. You offered your services. Then you started sleeping with her. Then you started helping her hide money from her fraud scheme because she was paying you well and you liked the lifestyle. You don't know what you're talking about. Marcus, I kept my voice level. The Attorney General is going to start investigating Westbridge's finances within the week. When they do, they're going to find your consulting agreements, your recommendations for how to structure the accounts, your emails about moving money around. They're going to connect you to the fraud, and when they do, you're going to need a lawyer much better than whatever Vanessa's been paying for. The reality was hitting him now. I could see it in his face, the understanding that this wasn't just about the affair. This was about criminal charges. Prison time, potentially. You did this on purpose, he said slowly. You investigated Westbridge because of me. Because of us. I investigated Westbridge because they were defrauding the state and stealing from special needs children. You being involved was just a bonus. I walked toward the stairs. I'm going upstairs to pack some things. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. You need to be gone by tomorrow evening. If you're not, I'll have the locks changed and your belongings put on the lawn. Sarah, please. We can work this out. No, we can't. This isn't a marriage worth saving, Marcus. It probably never was. I paused on the stairs, looking back at him. You know what the worst part is? I would have loved you through almost anything. Failure, mistakes, even financial struggles. But you chose to lie. You chose to steal from me while pretending to love me. You chose to help someone defraud vulnerable children. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. And choices have consequences. I went upstairs, leaving him standing in the kitchen with the divorce papers. I packed methodically, clothes for a week, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. Everything else could be sorted out later through lawyers. When I came back downstairs with my suitcase, Marcus was still at the table. He'd been crying, I could tell. His eyes were red, his face blotchy. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it. For lying, for Vanessa, for everything. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. I headed for the door. Goodbye, Marcus. Have your lawyer contact mine. I drove to a hotel downtown, checked into a room with a view of the city, and ordered room service. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to the superintendent, documenting the chain of custody for every piece of evidence in the Westbridge case. making sure that no one could claim I'd acted improperly or let personal feelings interfere with my investigation. My phone rang at 9 p.m. Priya. I just got a very interesting call from a reporter, she said, asking about potential conflicts of interest in the Westbridge investigation. Let me guess. Someone told them that my husband was involved with Vanessa Harmon? Vanessa's lawyers, almost certainly. They're trying to discredit the investigation by making it look personal. It doesn't matter. The evidence stands on its own. I pulled up the email I'd been drafting. I'm sending the superintendent a complete breakdown of the investigation timeline, showing that we started looking into Westbridge months before I discovered the affair. Every piece of evidence was gathered through proper channels. Every violation was documented according to protocol. My personal life doesn't change the facts. I know, but they're going to make it ugly anyway. Let them. I've been preparing for this. I hit send on the email. The truth is going to come out eventually. That Westbridge was committing fraud long before I got involved. That Marcus was helping them do it. That I investigated thoroughly and professionally despite personal complications. If anything, it makes the case stronger. I had every reason to look the other way, and I didn't. You're really not worried? About what, my career? My reputation? I laughed. Priya, I just destroyed a prestigious private school and exposed a major fraud scheme. I'm divorcing my husband and potentially sending him to prison. Worried is not what I'm feeling right now. What are you feeling? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Free, I said finally. I feel free. 3 months later, the Attorney General's office filed charges against Vanessa Harmon on 17 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and perjury. Marcus was named as a co-conspirator in 8 counts, related to financial manipulation and money laundering. Both were looking at serious prison time. My divorce was finalized 6 weeks after I filed. Marcus didn't contest it. His lawyers advised him that fighting would only make him look worse in the criminal case. I got the house, my full pension, and a clean break. He got nothing except mounting legal bills. The Westbridge parents initially tried to vilify me, claiming I'd destroyed a good school because of a personal vendetta. That narrative lasted about 2 weeks, until the full extent of the fraud became public. Then they got quiet. Some even apologized. Their children were fine. Most got placed in other private schools. The special education students were transferred to a public school program with actual qualified teachers and proper resources. Several of them were thriving now that they were getting real support. I was sitting in my office on a Tuesday afternoon when Jennifer called with the final news. Vanessa took a plea deal. 8 years in a minimum security facility. Marcus is holding out for trial, but his lawyer says the evidence is too strong. He'll probably take a deal too. Good. I was reviewing an application from a new charter school, looking for the telltale signs of fraud and corner cutting. Thanks for letting me know. How are you doing? Really? I looked around my office. At the certificates on the wall, the files stacked neatly on my desk, the window overlooking the city. I thought about my empty house that was slowly becoming my home. About the book club I'd joined. The therapy sessions that were helping me process years of being underestimated and lied to. I'm good, I said. I'm actually really good, and I was. Because here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't fix the hurt or erase the betrayal. But accountability does something better. It proves that actions have consequences. It proves that lies eventually get exposed. It proves that the people who thought they were smarter than you, who thought they could use you, who thought you were too boring or too ordinary to fight back, they were wrong. I wasn't a dead-end teacher with a dead-end job. I was the person who made sure that schools actually did what they promised. That children got the education they deserved. That fraud didn't go unpunished just because it wore expensive clothes and had powerful friends. Marcus and Vanessa had underestimated me. They'd seen what they wanted to see, a quiet, boring wife with a nothing job. They'd never bothered to look deeper, to ask questions, to wonder if maybe there was more to me than what appeared on the surface. That was their mistake, and it cost them everything. I finished reviewing the charter school application, made my notes, and started on the next file, because there would always be another school trying to cut corners. Another administrator thinking they were too smart to get caught. Another fraud scheme wrapped in pretty promises. And I would be there, patient and thorough, documenting every violation and building every case until it was bulletproof. People called it revenge. I called it justice, but honestly, it felt pretty good either way. The pregnancy test was still in my bathroom trash at home. The one I'd never taken because I already knew the answer. Yesterday, I'd finally thrown it away. Not because the infertility hurt less, but because I was beginning to understand that some endings make room for new beginnings. I didn't know what those beginnings looked like yet. Maybe adoption. Maybe foster care. Maybe a life focused on protecting other people's children through my work. What I did know was that I was done being underestimated. Done being quiet. Done letting people tell me who I was supposed to. B. Marcus had seen a boring teacher in a dead-end job. Vanessa had seen someone beneath her. Notice, they'd both been looking at the same woman. They'd just been too blind to see what she was actually capable of, and by the time they figured it out, it was far too late. I closed my laptop, gathered my things, and headed home. To my house, my space, my life. A life I'd fought for with patience, documentation, and cold, methodical precision. Some people called me ruthless for destroying my husband's career along with his mistress's school. I called it fair. They'd stolen from children, lied to parents, and betrayed everyone who trusted them. I'd simply made sure they paid the price. And if that made me ruthless, good. The world needed more ruthless people on the side of truth. I smiled as I drove home through the city lights, already thinking about the next case on my desk. Another school, another investigation, another opportunity to make sure that justice, cold, systematic, inevitable justice, prevailed. Because that's what I did. That's who I was. And I was just getting started. The end up next. You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.